Oh well, don't know why. Sending data. Hmm. Oh well. Streaming. 2 out of 2. It just took YouTube a little while. Hello, YouTubey. Alright. Welcome to the 99th episode of the Henry George Week Daily Devotional. We are in chapter 4 about the changes that would be wrought in social organization and social life. Were we to implement the remedy, the land value tax. My name is Max, and I am a Georgist. I am recording these readings because my friend John didn't like the free audio book of Progress and Poverty, and it is my mission to make John a Georgist. So this is my free audio book. We continue. George writes, as soon as a child can command its muscles, it will begin to make mud pies or dress a doll. Its play is but the imitation of the work of its elders. Its very destructiveness arises from the desire to be doing something, from the satisfaction of seeing itself accomplish something. There is no such thing as the pursuit of pleasure for the sake of pleasure. Our very amusements amuse only as they are, or simulate, the learning or the doing of something. The moment they cease to appeal either to our inquisitive or to our constructive powers, they cease to amuse. George should have been a game designer. George did not design Monopoly. That was designed by Lizzie Magie, a Georgist, in 1904 or 5 or 6. 1904, I think, is when she first published it. It will spoil the interest of the novel reader to be told just how the story will end. It is the I push back a little bit on that though. One, I read a study that people who were told how a classic novel ends and people who weren't reported the same level of enjoyment, but then asked to describe like what they liked, their answers were different. However, I don't believe in any studies anymore, given the replication crisis, which I might blog about, given that Palladium just published or is about to publish. I saw a preview. I spent one of my free preview article credits on Palladium's blog so that I could read the article about the replication crisis early. Wasn't anything terribly novel to me. I've been very interested in the replication crisis for a long time. So, nonetheless, back to this. I don't know if that study can be considered valuable. I hate being spoiled, so I'm with George on that. I do enjoy rereading certain things that I think are worth it, even though I know the ending. It's interesting. It is the only chance, I'm back to reading George now, and the skill involved in the game that enable the card player to kill time by shuffling bits of pasteboard. Yes, chance, RNG. The luxurious frivolities of Versailles were possible to human beings only because the king thought he was governing a kingdom, and the courtiers were in pursuit of fresh honors and new pensions. People who lead what are called lives of fashion and pleasure must have some other object in view, or they would die of ennui. They support it only because they imagine that they are gaining position, making friends, or improving the chances of their children. Shut a man up and deny him employment, and he must either die or go mad. Powerful words. I watched a video yesterday of a woman grooming a horse, and that's just such a funny thing. And I mean, yeah, people do it all the time. They love doing it, grooming their dogs, grooming their horses. And there are people whose full-time job, their whole living is making horses look pretty. Um, and that is a good, beautiful, cool, fun thing. I enjoyed watching, and then now there are people who make videos about it, and I'm watching that. I guess I'm just saying that as we all get richer, we should all have horses that we all um, make pretty, because pretty things are pretty. Um, yeah, not a degrowther. And I definitely also say that I have felt the brush of madness, perhaps, maybe over like this last year after I broke my ankle, and you are shut up. And I have my video game and things to work on, but even working alone is not so great always. I did have a lot of friends come take care of me and help me out though, but I have spent a lot of time alone, and you go a couple days without talking to people or going outside or doing anything. That's all it takes to feel like, whoa, I could sort of begin to imagine what it would be like to be, in solitary confinement in a prison and going mad. My grasp on my mental health is quite frail, I suppose, as it is for most humans. It is not labor in itself that is repugnant to man. It is not the natural necessity for exertion which is a curse. It is only labor which produces nothing, exertion of which he cannot see the results. To toil day after day, and yet get but the necessaries of life, this is indeed hard. It is like the infernal punishment of compelling a man to pump lest he be drowned, or to trudge on a treadmill lest he be crushed. But released from this necessity, men would work the harder and the better, for then they would work as their inclinations led them. Then would they seem to be really doing something for themselves or for others. Was Humboldt's life an idle one? Did Franklin find no occupation when he retired from the printing business with enough to live on? Is Herbert Spencer a laggard? Did Michelangelo paint for board and clothes? I don't think George can imagine Sisyphus happy, put it that way. I struggle with this. I don't know. I've never, like, would I be happy? Well, I suppose when I think about if I were given a citizen's dividend, like a universal basic income, and my art wasn't going to make me a lot of money, I mean, every day I would work on my video game, but I would be working towards an end, a goal of making that video game. So while I wouldn't, like, we're assuming in this world that I'm only ever going to make my, like, monetarily, I'll only ever make the citizen's dividend, which is not a very great wage, but one to live off of, board and clothes. But I would be doing my art for that. If I were having to simply do other kinds of toil just for that, well, that would be pretty terrible. If I didn't, depends if that allowed me other time in my life, free time or something, to pursue other goals that I did find interesting, I guess. Anyway, the fact is that the work which improves the condition of mankind, the work which extends knowledge and increases power and enriches literature and elevates thought, is not done to secure a living. It is not the work of slaves driven to their task either by the lash of a master or by animal necessities. It is the work of men who perform it for its own sake, and not that they may get more to eat or drink or wear or display. In a state of society where want was abolished, work of this sort would be enormously increased. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the universal basic income discussion hinges around this kind of fight where it's like you give people a bunch of money, and it's like, oh, they just sit around and do nothing. They play video games all day. I have a mixed feeling about that because I think it's perfectly fine if a bunch of people do want to play video games as one of their primary activities in life. I don't see it that differently than playing sports or um, grooming horses. I think a certain kind of video game and many people's passion for video games does stem out of a core loneliness and a lack of social options. Um, Not saying, yeah. And so I think, like in my little Georgist ideal world, where the urban fabric is much improved, and you would have many neighbors who were trustworthy and well off, and you wouldn't be afraid of all of them, and they wouldn't all be forced to go do things they don't like. And our whole food culture industry food environment would be vastly improved, so we would just be healthier. We wouldn't have, I don't know. I don't think there would be nearly as many people resorting to the pure escapism and distractionism of video games. They would be playing them and enjoying them as you do art in a sort of proper way. Art and sport, I don't know. That's my hope, I guess. I do have a current especially also were you to abolish patent and copyright, you wouldn't have this weird incentive of the video game industry to be milking the gamer for all of the money they can get out of them. Uh, you would simply be trying, if it were a patronage model. Similarly with film and TV, uh, if they couldn't rely on IP, then the marketing. Yeah, if you couldn't rely on IP and reproduction rights of a movie or a TV show, um, then the whole marketing spend would dissolve, and the art would be created for without all of these perverse incentives. It's crazy to think about abolishing copyright sometimes. All right, let's get back to George. I am inclined to think that the result of confiscating rent and George himself, I always have to make sure I mention this, did not believe in abolishing copyright. He said copyright should last 20 years or something. Which would mean I could write my own Star Wars movie now. How long is Star Wars copyrighted for? Copyright typically lasts 70 years. Original Star Wars movie will enter the public domain in 2072. Well, that's 72 years. What? It came out in like episode 4 release date was 77. 1977 plus 70 should be in 2047. I may not make it to 2072. I think I'll make it to 2047. "95 years after publication." That's ridiculous. Like, what is the reason for that? That's vile. Um, all right. Wherever large capitals were used to assume the cooperative form, since the more equal diffusion of wealth would unite capitalist and laborer in the same person. Uh, I'm inclined to think that the result of confiscating rent, um, the organization of labor, assumes the cooperative form, since the more equal diffusion of wealth would unite the capitalist and laborer in one and the same person. But whether this would be so or not is of little moment. The hard tolls, this is often talked about with the similarity in socialists and Georgists, that the sort of final result, like Georgism actually brings about many of the goals of socialism, that socialism's means do not actually bring about these goals. But whether this would be so or not is of little moment. The hard toll of routine labor would disappear, wages would be too high and opportunities too great to compel any man to stint and starve the higher qualities of his nature, and in every avocation the brain would aid the hand. Work, even of the coarser kinds, would become a lightsome thing, and the tendency of modern production to subdivision would not involve monotony or the contraction of ability in the worker, but would be relieved by short hours, by change, by the alternation of intellectual with manual occupations. Yeah, this kind of idea where there are times when I would happily work on a conveyor belt or, assembly line for a few hours, but not every day for 10 hours, rings very true to me. I have friends who opened a brewery, and several times when they were first starting up, friends and friends of friends. Hey, Javi. Friends, they would ask friends and friends of friends to come just help, um, like peel fruit. So you would just sit there for like 2 or 3 hours peeling oranges or cutting up pineapples, um, or like cutting the stems off of strawberries. And you just sat in a circle with like a dozen plus people. And you just like joked around, peeled fruit, occasionally ate a piece of fruit, had some beer, and yeah, after like 2, 3 hours, your fingers were sore and tired because you're not really used to doing that. But it felt great. It was awesome. I wouldn't want to do it. Wouldn't want to do it 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. Yeah, haha V says I would farm with my dad on Saturdays and it was family time after a few hours. Yeah. So 100% I'm with George that a human would be very happy, um, that short hours of the kind of monotonous work would even an alternation of intellectual with manual occupations. Um, seems exactly what the human mind is like suited for. You go farm for a few hours, you come back to your cottage, you play music, you play games, you hang out with your kids. I don't know. All right, let's get back to the reading. There would result not only the utilization of productive forces now going to waste, not only would our present knowledge, now so imperfectly applied, be fully used, but from the mobility of labor and the mental activity which would be generated, there would result advances in the methods of production that we now cannot imagine. For greatest of all the enormous wastes which the present constitution of society involves is that of mental power. We are wasting our mental power. How infinitesimal are the forces that concur to the advancement of civilization as compared to the forces that lie latent. How few are the thinkers, the discoverers, the inventors, the organizers, as compared with the great mass of the people. Yet such men are born in plenty. It is the conditions that permit so few to develop. There are among men infinite diversities of aptitude and inclination, as there are such infinite diversities in physical structure, that among a million there will not be two that cannot be told apart. But both from observation and reflection, yeah, this makes me think of that whole like, think of all of your friends and like, are any of them similar? Or, you have like one, you talk to any of them for like 2 minutes and it's just like, people are so different. Now, um, All right. But both from observation and reflection, I am inclined to think that the differences of natural power are no greater than the differences of stature or of physical strength. Turn to the lives of great men and see how easily they might never have been heard of. Had Caesar come of a proletarian family, had Napoleon entered the world a few years earlier, had Columbus gone into the church instead of going to the sea, had Shakespeare been apprenticed to a cobbler or chimney sweep, had Sir Isaac Newton been assigned by fate the education and the toil of an agricultural laborer, had Dr. Adam Smith been born in the coal hues, or Herbert Spencer forced to get his living as a factory operative, what would their towns have availed? But there would have been, it will be said, other Caesars or Napoleons, Columbuses or Shakespeares, Newtons, Smiths or Spencers. This is true, and it shows how prolific our human nature is. As the common worker is on need transformed into queen bee, so when circumstances favor his development, what might otherwise pass for a common man rises into a hero or leader, discoverer or teacher, sage or saint. So widely has the sower scattered the seed, so strong is the germinative force that bids it bud and blossom. But alas for the stony ground and the birds and the tares. For one who attains his full stature, how many are stunted and deformed? The will, I, as this is phrased, I agree heavily. Many are stunted and deformed. I also agree, if Caesar hadn't been Caesar, somebody else would have done what he did, most likely. Maybe in a different way. If Newton hadn't been Newton, somebody else would have figured out what he's figured out, certainly. Yeah, I guess I know what George is going to say a little bit later, and I will have some criticism of that, I guess. But I guess I'll wait till he actually says it. I thought he was going to, I was a little mixed up what he was going into here. The will within us is the ultimate fact of consciousness, yet how little have the best of us in acquirements, in position, even in character, that may be credited entirely to ourselves? How much to the influences that have molded us? Who is there wise, learned, discreet, or strong, who might not, were he to trace the inner history of his life, turn, like the Stoic emperor, to give thanks to the gods, that by this one and that one and here and there, good examples have been set him, noble thoughts have reached him, and happy opportunities opened before him? Who is there who with his eyes about him has reached the meridian of his life? Who has not sometimes echoed the thought of the pious Englishman, as the criminal passed to the gallows? But for the grace of God, there go I. How little does heredity count as compared with conditions? This one, we say, is the result of 1,000 years of European progress, and that one of 1,000 years of Chinese petrifaction. Yet placed an infant in the heart of China, and but for the angle of the eye or the shade of the hair, the Caucasian would grow up as those around him, using the same speech, thinking the same thoughts, exhibiting the same tastes. Change Lady Vere de Vere in her cradle with an infant of the slums, and will the blood of 100 earls give you a refined and cultured woman? To remove want and the fear of want, to give all classes leisure and comfort and independence, the decencies and refinements of life, the opportunities of mental and moral development, would be like turning water into a desert. The sterile waste would clothe itself with verdure, and the barren places would, verdure meaning greenness, the barren places where life seemed banned would ere long be dappled with the shade of trees and musical with the song of birds. Dappled with the shade, dappled with musical, with the song. Talents now hidden, virtues unsuspected, would come forth to make human life richer, fuller, happier, nobler. I spent like an hour last night watching American Cornhole League professional cornhole players. There are so many diverse pro sports now, which is very interesting to me as a way of creating many more distinct communities and distinct hierarchies, which I think is very meaningful to human communities, forming smaller communities um, instead of these like weird vicarious mega communities that we all like. I don't know. So many people want to be part of the Democratic, or be a Democrat or a Republican because it gives them an identity and a group, but they're just viewers. They're not. It's so these communities are so big. Like if you can't have a reputation in a community, I want to argue that it's not actually a community. Not everyone has to know it, but a lot of people have to like at least know of you or know of. I don't know what I'm arguing for exactly, other than meaningful community cannot be massive. It has to be something around like like some sort of thing or concept similar like Dunbar's number. Um, I don't know if it's 150 people, like Dunbar's number is exactly, or if it's like 5,000 people or something. But anyway, um, fuller, happier, nobler. For in these round men who are stuck into for in these round men who are stuck into three-cornered holes, and three-cornered men who are jammed into round holes, in these men who are wasting their energies in the scramble to be rich, in these who in factories are turned into machines, who are chained by necessity to bench or plow, in these children who are growing up in squalor and vice and ignorance, are powers of the highest order, talents the most splendid. They need but the opportunity to bring them forth. Consider the possibilities of a state of society that gave that opportunity to all. Let imagination fill out the picture. Its colors grow too bright for words to paint. Consider the moral elevation, the intellectual activity, the social life. Consider how by 1,000 actions and interactions the members of every community are linked together, and how in the present condition of things, even the fortunate few who stand upon the apex of the social pyramid must suffer, though they know it not, from the want, ignorance, and degradation that are underneath. This is something Georgia should consider focusing more on. Even like when talking to landlords and the wealthy, they stand to gain the things they truly want. I don't think they really truly want all the money. They want status, they want safety. Occasionally you find a psychopath who, I guess, does just want to screw over other people, but I do not think that that's the majority. I also tend to think most psychopaths aren't able to keep their be organized and intentional enough to actually be successful. Consider these things and then say whether the change I propose would not be for the benefit of everyone. Because I do tend to think we live in this very distorted meritocracy. Very distorted. There's plenty of like corruption and um, generational tyranny kind of thing. But we do, like, if you are super smart, super talented, you'll often rise to the top of your field and do well. And this meritocracy sort of smooths over some of the problems, which is we have a winner takes all system. You know, I've said this before, you look in nature, you can have an alpha dog, but the alpha dog, he has his own pack, sure, that he is the leader of, but there are many, many packs. It's not that one alpha dog gets to eat all the food and mate with 1,000 women or 1,000 female dogs, or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, or all the female dogs in the county. Um, Consider these things and then say whether the change I propose would not be for the benefit of everyone, even the greatest landholder. Would he not be safer of the future of his children in leaving them penniless in such a state of society than in leaving them the largest fortune in this? Did such a state of society anywhere exist, would he not buy entrance to it cheaply by giving up all his possessions? Well, it's just hard to ever believe. Yeah, I would be very, if I were super wealthy, I'd be very skeptical of society being fully reformed, so that giving up all of my wealth would be very scary. I suppose if I truly did believe a society were that way, maybe. I have now traced to their source social weakness and disease. I have shown the remedy. I have covered every point and met every objection. But the problems that we have been considering, great as they are, pass into problems greater yet, into the grandest problems with which the human mind can grapple. I am about to ask the reader who has gone with me so far to go with me further into still higher fields, but I ask him to remember that in the little space which remains of the limits to which this book must be confined, I cannot fully treat the questions which arise. I can but suggest some thoughts which may perhaps serve as hints for further thought. So come back next time. We'll be in Book 10, The Law of Human Progress. Goody goody gumdrops. See ya. We did it. Episode 99. Continued 3. Um... LVT would unlock new game plus on Earth. That's what I'm gonna say. I guess we'll say this is finished. Fin. Um. The highest motivations of humans from child to adult are not purely are not for wealth gathering. Amusement ceases to be amusement when amusement is the aim. George should have been a game designer. Even the land, all members of society, even the landlords, would gain from the unimaginably unimaginably beneficial benefits from the LVT, from the single LVT. Okay, we HGDD 99, Book 9, Chapter 4, finished. Well, the 7:30 meetup in Philadelphia has come and gone. Wonder how it went. Whoops. Henry George Daily Devotional. No. Alright. Yeah. Missed you at OC Indies last night. I don't know if I told you, I applied to the Robert Schalkenbach Foundation to work for them. Oh, sorry to hear that. And they are located in Princeton, New Jersey. They are a Georgist nonprofit. So there's a slight chance I might, if depending on if I get the job, if they don't want to do remote work, I don't think they officially want to do remote work, and then I have to decide if I'd actually want to move. There's a remote chance I might be moving. Anyway, alright, I'm also signing off. If I don't want, very cool. If you don't want to move, dot dot dot. Are you saying I'll run for something.org? Well, you should read my article about sortition and learn about sortition. I don't think I want to run for public office, to be honest. If that's what this is. I don't think, also it says for young candidates. I don't qualify. Local office would be kind of interesting. I would be interested in trying to organize citizen assemblies. I have gone ahead and, well, whatever. I've joined the Strong Towns Instagrams for some of the local, average politician is 80. I'd be young for a president. How old is AOC age? She's 34 now. She's getting up there. Yeah, there's job. Like my order of priority for jobs is independently wealthy video game studio. Next would be working maybe with a few good friends on our dream game or something if we had some funding. Next is a Georgist advocacy job that I can still work part-time on games. Next wouldn't be just a general political position, it would be just getting a software development job in games, I hope, I guess. Maybe. That one I'm not sure. Then it would be like maybe soccer coach or something. I don't see the jobs. Job. Jobs. Chief Impact Officer. I mean, there's also like 80,000 hours if you want to find meaningful jobs. Supposedly, this is supposed to help you. Um, I remember that, yeah. But there was a time when I was very interested in maybe like trying to really help with progress, so to speak. And I still believe that technological progress is absolutely important and good. I just think right now, most of the benefits, not all, but a huge amount of the benefits of progress, technological progress, are simply siphoned into the pockets of the huge land owning interests. Um, as she listed, the job postings interesting. They don't allow for wage negotiations to help with income inequality. Interesting. And the thing is, I don't think, just like you can't really address climate issues by like you individually not driving a car and always biking. So too, I don't think you can really address landlord issue by like selling your house if you own a house. Um, I mean, I do think like if you were a slave holder and you had like hundreds or thousands of slaves, you maybe could make a difference. So if you owned, if you were Bill Gates or somebody who owned, the other problem is you could free your slaves. If you had slaves, you could free them, and then they would be free. If you have land, you can't just free your land. If you were to sell all of your houses or your land, it's very likely some other landlord buys them. So like it's just not even, you know, the option of returning landlord and returning, sorry, the option of returning land to the people like doesn't really exist unless you were just to, spend the wealth you make off of your renters or your land in a good way, which I mean, I do think a lot of people do that. I do think a lot of wealthy people actually altruistically donate a lot of money and resources to doing good things. I think all of the churches in America do good things based off of the wealth of a lot of landowning people who give to them. So do a lot of non-religious nonprofits. But it's all sort of handicapped. And there's that super good quote from George. Um, let's find it, maybe. Um, damn it. Here we go. If it's not in this one, it's here. Charity is false, futile, and poisonous when offered as a substitute for justice. That one is pretty devastating. Anyway. All right. Let's go do our labor for the day. Facts, George, facts. All right. See you when I see you. Hasta lasagna.